I've been watching some videos from YouTube channels that criticize the modern world, and many of them share a perspective on modernity that resonates with my own. What strikes me, however, is how they go about offering solutions. More often than not, they rely on false narratives or artificial syncretism to justify the direction they are taking on. What's curious is that the actual problem they are trying to solve is often hidden, or only revealed at the very end of the video, as if it's something that can be said too openly. Maybe that's because exposing it too clearly would give away their real intention. Personally, I don't see any reason to hide it, so let me start by stating the issue plainly. Firstly, we know that the modern world has become deeply atomized. Liberalism has fostered an individualism based on utility, productivity, and mechanistic understanding of value, as if human worth could be measured by output only. The modern state, hand in hand with corporate power, has perfected the art of extracting value from the individual, whether through taxation or alienated labor. The result has been social decay because the real interests of the majority are no longer being served. And yet, strangely, the blame is often placed on individualism itself, as if people caring about their own interests were the root of the problem. But I would argue the opposite. The real issue is not that people are individualistic, but that their individual interests are being systematically ignored. The true problem lies in the impersonal collectivism of the state and of the corporations, and not in the fact that people want to live for themselves. So understanding this dynamic takes some effort, and because of that, many YouTube channels get confused. They start attacking symptoms instead of causes, and when it comes time to propose solutions, what do they offer? Another kind of collectivism, but this time with a more traditional veneer. There's a clear interest in building cohesive groups, reviving a shared identity, reconstructing a unified social fabric. That's what these narratives are really aiming for. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that goal. I just don't understand why it's so often veiled. Instead of being honest about this aim, they just construct layered justifications which I will now begin to unpack. The first narrative that emerges to justify this push for cohesion is the claim that people are searching for happiness, and that happiness can be measured through objective criteria. But here's the contradiction. If your goal is to critique the modern world, then your target should be the aggressive utilitarianism of the modernity. The very idea that happiness is something quantifiable and calculable. Yet, what do these thinkers do? They end up reinforcing the same framework by defining happiness as the fulfillment of basic needs. But fulfilling basic needs is not the same as being happy. It is simply a way of not feeling bad. When you define happiness as universal terms, using the same criteria for everyone in the group, you are just repeating the same mistake that utilitarianism made. You're just dressing it up differently. Another common narrative used to support this collective vision is the idea of group altruism, that individuals are naturally inclined to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the group. But this is simply a mechanistic variant of the utilitarian logic. In reality, people engage with groups not out of selfless devotion, but because they recognize that social cohesion increases their chances of fulfilling their personal interests. So the sacrifice involved, it is not true altruism, it is a regulated form of egoism. So everyone agrees to restrain their selfish impulses just enough to make cooperation worthwhile. And because this balance has broken down in the modern world, people try to reinvent a new kind of utilitarian structure to suppress individualism altogether. From there, a series of myths arise. For example, the myth that individuals find fulfillment through sacrifice for the group, or that reproductive success is the ultimate form of self-realization. But that doesn't make any sense, because plenty of people today have already been success at it, and yet they feel entirely unfulfilled. So another popular myth is that people find meaning by serving their nation or contributing to the progress of their society. And I think this is probably the most common justification for altruism and self-sacrifice. But when I look closely, I see something else. I see that fulfillment doesn't come from a transcendent ideal, but from one's position. We don't transcend ourselves by dissolving into some kind of collective or some kind of collective idea. We just project ourselves beyond who we are by becoming more of ourselves. And here I agree with from Nietzsche. We long to become stronger, to surpass ourselves. But that's not altruism, in a sense. It is a noble egoism. Like when someone is still alive and knows they are doing something that will outlast themselves, they feel full, they feel proud and radiant. And what drives them, it is not service to a group or a flag, but it is the recognition of the weight of their position in a given contest. So the contest, it is the thing here. And that's why we don't see heroes emerge in a vacuum. No one tries to save the world randomly. People act when they are placed in situations that call for action, when the moment gives their actions meaning. Even soldiers don't draw strength from the people or from the idea of the people, but they draw it from their commander, from their broadening arms. So the nation is just a convenient narrative, a shared symbol to bind men together. And the real bond is positional. It is about who is standing next to you. So this brings me to my theory. Our relationship to the world is positional, and we find meaning just in action, but only when that action is part of the experience that we ourselves are living in. Meaning is born in relation, not necessarily because of the other, but through the position we occupy in relation to them. It is I who live it, it is I who feel it, and that is why it matters. So even when only two people understand what something means between them, without relying on universal truths, religious doctrines, or mechanical systems, that's already enough to create real, shared meaning. And this helps explain why we are capable of acting together towards common goals. So fulfillment arises from that relation position, from that lived dynamic. And this is what gives rise to mutual respect between artists, between rivals, between enemies. It is not built on shared dogma, but on the recognition that each occupied a meaningful place in the life of the other. For an action to be truly altruistic, it would have to be done with complete disinterest, detached from any personal contest or position. And frankly, I don't think that's even possible. So, because even our noblest acts carry with them a subtle awareness that we are the ones living in them, that we were the ones in position, this isn't selfishness in the vulgar sense, but it is a kind of deeper egoism in a lived sense, a kind of egoism that defeats both nihilism and determinism, because it restores the subject to the center of experience, not as a cog in a machine, but as a presence, alive, aware, and irreplaceable. So if you like this video, consider subscribing to my channel, and we'll see in the next video.